to start this review by saying I didn't really like Breath of the Wild. I know, shoot me. I thought it was a good base, but ultimately felt like it had a lot of flaws that needed to be fixed. But I still wanted to give Tears of the Kingdom a chance to improve on that formula. And Tears of the Kingdom absolutely killed it in so many ways, improving on a lot of the problems I had, but did miss a couple things that I think are worth mentioning. But before you get out your pitchforks, hear me out. I might not think this is a perfect game, but I still think it's a damn good one. Let's start with the positives. The physics of this game feel like they were overhauled from Breath of the Wild, with tons of new interactions between objects and a power set that complements them so well. At the center of it all is the new Overhand ability, which allows you to pick up and attach objects to each other. This power is so insanely dynamic, and really forms the backbone of the gameplay in a way Magnesis never quite did. The other powers are all cool and have tons of dynamic potential too, except Ascend, but Overhand is on another level due to the way it recontextualizes the entire game once you get it. Hyrule also feels fresh and much less empty this time. I feel like the overworld in Breath of the Wild was kind of boring. You'd wander from shrine to shrine, occasionally grabbing Koroks on the way, and usually wouldn't see another human being for a long time. This game feels more populated though, which fixed my biggest issue with Breath of the Wild. There are more NPCs, more side quests that aren't just fetch quests, though there are plenty of fetch quests, and more types of collectibles to find in the world that matter. Between the hidden caves and giant drawings on the ground, there's just more stuff to find in this game. And with the overhauled powers and physics system, exploring and finding all those things is more fun than it ever was in Breath of the Wild. I love this game so much. Now, with that being said, let's dip our toes into what isn't quite working. Please don't kill me. The Sky World is kind of boring. This might be surprising for watching this video. I didn't want to show stuff from too late in the game, so I'm mostly focusing on the Great Sky Island here, which is the game's tutorial land. It's actually a pretty cool space and populated with 4 shrines and lots to do. Other parts of the Sky World, however, tend to be little tiny islands with a single chest on them. I haven't found another large landmass like the tutorial one in my entire time of playing, which was just up to the first dungeon. Occasionally, I'll find a few islands strung together in a very linear fashion, but still usually just a singular puzzle that you're solving between them. Interesting parts of the Sky World are the exception, not the norm. And just because the game showed you the really cool place first, doesn't mean you should expect the rest of the game to work like that. I'd say if you're expecting Skyworld to be a map as expansive and as fun to explore as Hyrule proper, you should temper those expectations. It's not so much a second map as it is an addition to the main map. Another problem I had were the dungeons. And don't worry, no dungeon footage here, no spoilers in this review. That being said, I made sure to play at least one before I dropped this review, and it was a pretty lackluster experience. Like with Breath of the Wild, dungeons involve hitting 5 switches to unlock the boss, then killing the boss to finish the dungeon. My main issue is that each switch feels like its own puzzle, and none of them really play into each other. Older Zelda games had much more complex dungeons where finishing one puzzle flowed naturally into the next, and the whole place felt interconnected. It's something you can't do without a more purposeful and linear dungeon design, and it's something that still feels poorly executed in Tears of the Kingdom. There are some big improvements from Breath of the Wild, however, mainly in that the map is much easier to use, and the dungeons don't center around a one-time gimmick anymore, but instead around a power that you'll be able to use outside the dungeon as well. So, while dungeons still need some work, they do feel better than the previous game. I also feel like while the exploration of the open world is always fun and engaging, the rewards you get for exploring are still pretty lackluster. Breath of the Wild's rewards were always some kind of currency, and you needed to finish multiple puzzles to collect enough currency to get rewards. Tears of the Kingdom doubles down on this, and I still don't like it. My favorite Breath of the Wild moment was finding the Master Sword, because it was a unique reward for exploring that area you couldn't get anywhere else. I'd rather have more moments like that, but so far Tears of the Kingdom seems to want to give me as many new kinds of currency to buy upgrades as possible, which makes the reward for solving any individual puzzle feel less rewarding. Lastly, the game keeps you stuck in tutorial mode way too long. Tutorial Island is a bit longer than the plateau, and I found myself getting annoyed with it because I wanted to get my damn hang glider. Then once I left Tutorial Island, I found out you don't even get the glider until you finish more story beats. So feeling slightly frustrated, I went into a quick shrine, my first one on the mainland of Hyrule, only to find out it's a combat tutorial for dodging. I've been fighting enemies for 2 hours already. If I hadn't figured out how to dodge, I'd be dead. And that's the thing, I don't think this game needs a tutorial at all. The entire premise is about exploration. If you just give me my powers, I'd push all the buttons and figure out what they do, I promise. But even then, expanding the tutorial content past the tutorial island and locking you out of important parts of the game's movement until you finish them feels really bad, and will be especially annoying on future playthroughs. And let's be honest, none of the shrines should be tutorials. I just found one 8 hours in that was an arrow shooting tutorial. It's completely unnecessary. Now, that's all the bad. Now I'd like to cover the nitpicky stuff. These are the things that aren't the end of the world, but that you'd expect to be better in a $70 AAA game. First up, there are very few options to change your controls, which is annoying because I hate the default ones. Secondly, the frame rate is bad when there's lots of stuff on your screen, or you build an even slightly complex contraption. Speaking of building, my third nitpick is that the controls for it feel not good. The physics engine is complex enough that placing a part even slightly off means your contraption is suddenly on fire, which can be frustrating when it's so hard to use overhand quickly. I heard a rumor that there is some way to save contraptions later in the game, but I have no idea if that's actually true, and I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make anyways. And for my last nitpick, the game should really be fully voiced. I honestly can't believe I spent $70 on a game that doesn't even fully voice the damn intro. So, let's wrap things up. I do think this is a very good game. It's a fucking amazing game. My biggest problem with Breath of the Wild was the world feeling empty, and this game did such a better job with that. Yet I have found that some of the new areas, like the Sky Islands, sort of displaced that issue, being ultimately pretty boring and empty when compared to the more polished Hyrule. The game is objectively better than its predecessor, don't get me wrong. But with the higher price point, it kinda has to be, right? Ultimately, I feel like it still has too many flaws to justify a perfect score, but I'm happy to give it a solid 8 out of 10. But since I'm sure you disagree, let me know what you think about it down below. Talk about all the things you love, talk about all the things you hate, let it all out. Feel free to subscribe for more of my honest takes on popular games, and as for me, I'm gonna go back to trying to build a jet plane, because that's a thing you can do in this game. Bye!